everybody, welcome to the Into the Woods Sew Along. I'm so excited about this. I hope you've had a minute to get everything prepped and cut, and now we can dive into our first block, which is this beautiful bear paw. And so we're gonna make 3 of these this week, and every one is made exactly the same. So I'm gonna walk you through one block and you'll repeat those steps for all 3. So to get started, from the fabric that you cut, you're gonna take 20 of your 2.5-inch background squares. And in this case, for all 3 of our blocks, it's this fun black print that we've used. Then you're going to need 4 2.5-inch print squares for each block. So you actually are going to have double of the red and then just 4 of the white. So keep that in mind. And then you're going to need 8 of the 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangles. Again, this is per block. And then last of all, 4 of your 2.5 by 6.5-inch rectangles. And we're going to get started. So to begin, we're going to take 1 each of our 2.5-inch squares, red and black. And I'm actually going to go ahead and pull these over to the machine with me because we're going to do a little bit of chain piecing today. So I'm just going to slide everything over here and I'll show you how I do this when I sew. So I'm going to put these right sides together. Make sure they're all lined up. And then I'm going to put the red on top and just zoom down 1/4 inch. And then I can keep adding, since I know I'm going to do this 4 times. And I'll just keep going one after the other. This is great because it saves time and thread, because you're not clipping your threads in between each one. And one more. There we go. Now I can clip my threads and cut these apart. And then I'm going to take these to the iron. And we're going to press them to the dark side. So in that case, I've got the black squares on top, and I'm just going to roll these back. You can set your seams if you'd like. Some people swear by that. I've never noticed a big difference, if I'm being totally honest. There we go. And then we can take these 4 back to the machine. And we're going to sew one of our 4.5-inch rectangles to each one of these. Just the same, we'll do one after the other with a 1/4 inch seam. You do, or at least I wanted to make sure that I was using different prints as I went along, and so this next one on my pile was the same one that was already there, so I'm just going to set that aside for a different one and use this cute plaid. I just wanted this to look really scrappy. And then I can use this one here with these cute mountains and just make sure they're lined up. And one more. We're going to do the same thing where we just cut these apart and press them back. I just love all of these fabrics. They're so cute. There we go. And now the next step is to add our snowballs to the corners. And we're going to do that by taking our squares that we have, and then we're going to take 2 of our 2.5-inch background squares for each one of these. And we're gonna place them on the corner like this on both sides. And I usually just start with one side at a time because I am gonna chain piece these. And so I'll just kind of get these ready to go, stack them up like this, and do all the same corners. And then these are ready to take to the machine. And we're actually gonna just sew corner to corner. So if you wanted to, you could take your ruler and a pen and you could draw a line corner to corner. You could press it just like so. Fold this in half and press it. And then you can sew right on your crease line there. But because I have this diagonal seam tape on my machine, I actually don't need to mark mine at all. That's why I recommend it for this project. It makes it super easy. And so let me show you how I use that to snowball these blocks. So I'm going to start by putting my needle down, and I'm going to line this first corner up with the needle. Let's just make sure we've got this exactly square on our block. So we're going to put that right on the needle. And then this opposite corner, I'm going to have it right on this red line here. And as I follow this into the needle, as I sew along, I'm going to keep this point right on that red line. And then I will make sure that my seam is going exactly corner to corner without marking. So there's one. And we can just pick up the next one. Again, lining that right up with the needle and the opposite end on the red line. And zoom along. And last one. And now you're just going to repeat the exact same step on the other side. Okay, so we have finished snowballing both sides. And so you can see I left mine all attached. We can go ahead and cut those apart now. So I just come in with my rotary cutter or scissors and just trim those threads. Oops, that one's really bunching up. We don't want to cut our fabric, so just be careful. All right, and then now we can go back with our ruler and we can cut out this excess. And so we're just going to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. So I'm just going to turn and cut. Until we have all 4 of our blocks trimmed. And one more. All right, and now we can go ahead and press these open. Now when you're doing this, you do want to be careful not to stretch or pull those corners that you've added too much. You don't want to distort them. So we really just let the iron do the work. Roll those back. Oops. And one more. Ooh, and they're starting to come together. It's so exciting. Okay, so now we're going to take another 2.5 by 4.5, and we're going to add it to our block here. And I like to make sure when I'm adding these, I kind of want these to stagger almost like a log cabin. So I want to make sure that I'm adding my strip to the opposite side of my long piece here. So you can see here's my other 2.5 inch rectangle. I'm going to add this one to this opposite side, and I'm going to do that on all 4 of these. So we're going to take these to the machine and we can chain piece these again, just like before. That's what makes this block come together so quickly. So I took a few stitches and then I just want to make sure that my ends match up nicely. So I've just readjusted and I can zoom down. Make sure we don't have anything caught there. There we go. And I'll repeat that with the other 3. And our last one here. You can see by chain piecing, it really goes together super fast. And it is handy if you can make a little nest like Jenny says, where you can have your iron really close to you. Then you can literally just press in between and come right back and sew. But it's also nice to get up and stretch your legs now and then, so either way works just fine. So we'll press these back. There we go. And now we can add our last piece, that 2.5 by 6.5, to the other side. And so we'll do this to all 4, and then we're going to come back and snowball those corners as well. Okay, those 4 are all done. So I can trim these apart. We're going to go ahead and press these back. This block is so gratifying to see it all come together. And it really is fast if you're chain piecing and you have everything cut, which is why we took the time to cut everything beforehand. So now we have these 4, and the last step to get each of our quadrants ready is to snowball these corners just like we did before. So again, we're just going to take 1, and they're going to go on opposite sides, just like so. But I am going to just sew down 1 and then come back around so I can chain piece. And we're just going to sew corner to corner, just like we did before. So let's go ahead and get all of these ready. And we'll take them to the machine. And then I will meet you back here when we're all done. All right, so we have the snowballs added to both sides of all 4 of these blocks. So again, we're just going to trim these apart. And we're going to cut off the bulk so that we just have our 1/4 inch seam allowance. There's 1. 2. 1 more. And then we can just press these back. So let's take these over to the ironing board. Again, just roll that back. Make sure you don't have any tucks or pleats of your fabric. All right, now our 4 quadrants are ready to go. So as you can see, we've made all 4 of these quadrants exactly the same way. And now you can see that we just kind of rotate them around. And this is how they're going to come together in the block. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add our sashing pieces. So to do that, you need 4 1.5 by 6.5 inch background pieces. And those are going to go in between here and here. And then of course here and here. And then that leaves us one little spot here where we can put our 1.5 inch square cornerstone. And that is how the block will come together. So we're just going to sew this together in rows. I'm just going to lay these right sides together and take this to the machine. And I actually still chain piece here, and so I'm just going to fold all of these over and I can add these into the machine one after the other. So let's go ahead and do that. It's a huge time saver. And again, this is that 1/4 inch seam. And you do want to be really careful when we're dealing with these 1.5 inch strips. The smaller your strips are, the more obvious it can be if your seam allowance gets off. So just take your time. Then we can add in our sashing row with the little cornerstone. And our bottom row. There we go. Now I'm actually not even going to cut these apart. They kind of serve as pins to keep them where I want them, but I am going to press them. And so on the large sashing areas, I like to press those to the middle. So I'm going to roll those back like so. Then on this one, I'm going to press away. And I'm doing this to make sure that my seams will nest when I sew these together, which will make it so much easier to line everything up. So again, I pressed the top and bottom row in and this center sashing row out. So then we can just take these and we can add each of these pieces just like we did before, just by laying these over right sides together and taking them to the machine. And if you want to put a pin in so that you don't have to worry about dropping it, you can. I usually just kind of set it aside once I know where it needs to go. So I'll just have this stacked up for me off to the side. And I'll just start with this one. Take a few stitches and adjust at the bottom. Now I can add this sashing strip. There we go. Make sure it's all lined up. And my last one, I always want to check when I'm putting these together, make sure that they're going away from each other. We don't have anything turned the wrong way, so take a minute and do that. And then we can put these right sides together. And again, line up my bottom edge here and just zoom down the side. All right, now we're going to go ahead and press these as well, just so everything will come together nicely. Remember, top and bottom rows, we're pressing in towards the sashing. Our middle row, we're going to press out. And our bottom row, back in. And really, this is just a preference. If you want to press your seams open, you can. If you want to do opposite, I just like to make sure that they're going opposite directions so that they nest nicely. And what I mean by that is when I open these up, actually, let's press this one because it kind of turned on me. But when I fold these right sides together, what I want is for this row and this row to be going opposite ways. And the reason that I like that is it makes it possible to feel when it's going into the machine if they're nesting up. And it's just a great beginner trick to make things way easier and to have those nice crisp corners like we want in quilting. So let's go ahead and take this to the machine now. And I actually am going to flip this over because I like to have this skinny sashing piece on the top when I'm sewing. It makes it way easier. Sometimes those skinny strips like to have a mind of their own, so we don't want that. So as I get closer, again, I'm just going to make sure that those seams are nested how I want them. And I'll sew to that first seam, and then I'm going to line up again on the other side. There we go. Now you could press here if you wanted, but I'm just going to go ahead and finger press this back for now, and then fold this one over, make my seam go back where I wanted, and then we can start sewing this on as well. And our block will be complete. There we go. Ta-da! Our block is done. So I'm just going to give this a nice press. I like to press from the top first, just to make sure I don't have any pleats or tucks. Everything's laying nice and flat. And that looks really, really nice. I'm really happy with how that came together. So you're going to repeat those same steps, one more in red and one out of white, and I've actually already sewn those, so I have those ready here. And then the only other thing you need to do for these bear paw blocks is we're going to add some wide sashing strips in between. So you're going to need 4 3 by 13.5. Double check, measure your block, make sure that it finishes at 13.5. Mine does. If yours is just a little off because your seam allowance is different, that's not a big deal. You might wait to cut those sashing pieces until you've finished your block, because then you can cut them exactly to your size. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take those sashing strips. So I'm going to attach one of these 3 by 13.5 inch strips to either side, and then we can attach it to this row, and we'll have our entire row of bear paws ready to go. So let's just take this to the machine. Turn this and attach the sashing on the other side. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and pick up my other blocks here, and I'm gonna attach all of these together, just like so. Just take a few stitches and make sure I'm all lined up. Oops. There we go. Okay, then our row of bear paws is complete, and you can take a little breather, and I will see you back here for week 2.